Welcome back to the Back in Time podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Autry, joined as always by my co-host, JD. JD, what's going on tonight?
Fantastic. Thanks for asking. I'm really nervous and worried about tonight's episode because it is competitive as all hell. This is not an easy list to come up with. We are talking the top 5 movies from 1993. If you've not Googled or parceled off some information on what movies came out in 1993, do yourself a favor and just type in to the Google top movies 1993 and get a good glimpse of how competitive this list has to be. But outside of that, I'm doing fantastic. I had pizza for dinner. Duh.
That's great. My son had pizza. Little Jack's frozen pizza. What'd you eat?
Is
what
that
kind
your
of pizza?
son's name? Little Jack's frozen pizza?
Little Jack from
I feel like
Cook.
your son's... We had my parents came over for dinner, and they are driving my little brother's car, so they had to pick it up because he had been storing it at our place. But he's just returned from a tour in Greece and Poland as a U.S. Army man, and he is back in the States now. So we need to get his car back for him. So my parents came, we ordered some pizza, had some barbecue wings, a little salad. The moms had some LaCroix, water all around. It was a good conversation, good night. So that was from Mario's Pizza in North Aurora. So
is that the pizza we had at the party?
No, we had Charlie Fox.
Okay. Yeah. Is Mario's better?
I think Charlie Fox is better.
Okay. Then we're eating Charlie Fox next time. All right. Okay. Before we jump into the episode here, just want to thank you guys for hitting the download button on the podcast as usual. If you like what you hear, if you're enjoying the content, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor FM, and YouTube. And of course, if you want to actually watch us and see our face and watch JD mock me as I talk, super annoying, you can do that on YouTube. And if you want to just be content and just listen to the voices, of course, you can just keep on getting it the same way you have been. So, JD, let's talk about 1993, man. It was such a big year for film, like you said. The movie Jurassic Park became the highest grossing movie ever made. Walt Disney Studios celebrated 70 years, and we lost two pretty prominent young actors that year. Brandon Lee and River Phoenix both passed away while trying to film movies. And then we got our first ever video game adaptation, Super Mario Brothers, which we talked about in our archive. So, what kind of sticks out to you about 93?
It's obviously a big year. Phoenix dying was kind of shaking too, because he was so young. And I remember thinking 93, I would have been 7, 8 years old. And how old was he?
He was I think he was in his 20s, early 20s. But yeah.
Was he that old? I mean.
Yeah, because he did Stand By Me in 85 when he was like 10. So 10, 12 years old, maybe
like 17, 18.
Let me do a quick search on that. I could be wrong. Maybe I just thought he was a little bit older than he was. I mean, I know we lost him young, which, I mean, is always unfortunate. Yeah, he's 23 years old. So early 20s. So yeah, he would have been 15 for Stand By Me. But
yikes. It was a very interesting year. The Chicago Bears drafted Curtis Conway. You fact checked me last time we did a 93 movie, and I dropped that knowledge on you. Most certainly they drafted USC prospect Curtis Conway at a Conway jersey. Fuck off and die. Do not question me on that.
Okay. I did just to make sure, he was the number 7 pick in the NFL draft that year. Yeah, can you try and guess who the number 1 pick was?
It was a quarterback.
Quarterback, yep. Had a very strong arm, and eventually would go on to get replaced by considered the GOAT of quarterbacks.
Drew Bledsoe.
There you go. Drew Bledsoe in the number 2 pick, which was a huge flop. Rick Mirer from Notre Dame.
Oh my gosh, I remember getting a refractored card. Shout out to Stu Stone and Jack of
Stu
all
Stone,
trades.
yep.
But I got a refractored card of Rick Marin,
Meyer. Yeah, it's a weird.
Of his rookie card. So it was a card. It was his normal rookie card, but it was like embalmed. It had gold emboss on it.
Okay.
So that made it worth like 10 times its Beckett price. And
I wonder if
Beckett
that's the 93. Was it 93 Topps Gold?
I want to say you're correct.
Okay. Yeah, he was a huge flop. I was a big fan of him from Notre Dame, obviously. And yeah, the Bears had him at one point. He started 3 games for us, went 0-3, 0 touchdowns, 6 picks. Tough.
How are you do? That's rough.
It's really tough. But yeah, 93 was great because, I mean, basketball was never bigger. You've got the Michael Jordan first three-peat concluding that year with John Paxson beating the Phoenix Suns on a last-second shot. You've got, again, I mean, we talked about Super Mario Brothers a little bit, and I don't know if that'll be on our top 5 list, but that movie was much maligned, but I think it's really got this like cult following now. 20-something odd years later, all of a sudden people are finally appreciating Super Mario Brothers.
As they should. Bob Hoskins, John Leguizamo. It'll be difficult for this movie not to be included in anyone's list.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll find out what happens. So we will be back on the other side of a quick break, and we're going to be joined by our friends from the Real Talk Movie Podcast to break down our top 5 movies of 93. Stay tuned. So joining us on the podcast tonight are the guys behind the pretty new podcast called Real Talk Movie Podcast. We've got Tommy, Gabe, and Wes. Tommy, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Hey, good guys. Doing really well. Thanks for having us. Excited to get into this list.
Absolutely. Excited to have you guys. And Wes, how are you?
I'm doing really good. Glad to be back on the show.
Yeah. One of our most downloaded episodes of the year, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh, yeah. Now, I tried to tell a bunch of people about it, so hopefully I threw at least a few downloads your way.
Yeah, you definitely did. And then we've got Gabe as well. Gabe, I'm loving the shirt. We're both rocking Jurassic Park, so immediately we're friends, dude.
Awesome. I knew that would happen. You know, Wes, I didn't listen to your Ninja Turtle episode. I'm embarrassed to say that, but no, short-term listener, first-time caller. I'm excited to be on the show, guys.
Welcome. It's already a good conversation that we've had going on. So this is going to be a fun episode. I think that there's going to be a lot of ups and downs, a lot of disagreements, and a lot of arguments.
Oh, you can't hurt our feelings.
No, I'm worried about you hurting my feelings.
He is sensitive. It's true. Wes, tell us a little bit about your guys' podcast just at the beginning here and just where people can listen to it. And then I know you guys had talked about a choice you made for our top 5 as well.
Well, we had been talking, you know, Gabe, T-Man, and myself, we've been friends since college, so getting close to 15, 16, 17 years. And for the last, and we've always talked a lot about movies with one another. And one day we were just talking about it, like, man, we should really start a podcast. And we drug our feet. And this COVID-19, one positive thing that came out of it was we got our podcast going with all the downtime. And we are pretty much now on all the major podcast directories. You can find us on Spotify, and if you go to Buzzsprout and Apple Podcasts and so forth. And we're just a movie podcast, and we didn't want to chain ourselves down to any particular format or any particular genre. We just want to be able to talk about everything in our love for movies. So you can go over to Twitter, and you can find us at REEL, REEL_cast. And the thing I was going to tell everybody at the beginning is that we just did an episode solely dedicated to Jurassic Park. That's episode 6 of our show. And so since we just got done talking so much about Jurassic Park, we wanted to provide a little bit more variety on your show. So we decided, since Jurassic Park would be our #1 movie for 1993, that we would not pick Jurassic Park and give 5 different movies. That way we provide you a little variety.
Okay. I love it. I'm excited to hear everybody's list here. So I'll give the breakdown and we'll jump into it here. So I'm going to go first. JD's going to go second. I've got Tommy third, Gabe fourth, and Wes bringing up the rear, the anchor in our 5-man sled here.
That's a serious position.
Yeah. So you're either the captain or you're the brake guy.
Probably the brake guy.
Yeah.
I'd say.
You're
So you're the Sanka.
Yeah. Kiss my lucky egg. Let's get going. So I'm going to start us off here. I am going to go with one of my favorite sports movies of all time. This was actually named by ESPN as one of the top 25 sports movies of all time. Came in number 24, and it's based off of the real story of a walk-on at Notre Dame, Rudy Rudiger. Stars Sean Astin, and if you guys are fans of the podcast, you can we talked about him a lot in our Goonies episode, and I think this will be a future episode one day, but my pick is Rudy. And just, being a kid that grew up in Indiana playing football, this movie obviously kind of struck a chord with me. And, every year we had that kid on our football team that we all called Rudy, and maybe tried a little bit too hard, wasn't very good, but darn it, he wanted to be out there. So we wanted to have him. So,
and in college, we called you, Kyle, the Rudy.
You did not call me Rudy.
No, that's a great pick. I love that movie. I would say it's probably one of the most inspirational films of all time as well. And what's funny is I just watched it a couple of nights ago, and I'm embarrassed to say, at 37 years old, I cried again. I cry every time I watch that freaking movie.
It's the only sports movie that every time I watch it, I cry. I can't get away from it.
Uh-huh.
I did. I love that pick.
Is it the moment where he goes rushing onto the field and then they pan to his dad and he's like in the crowd, and I'm like, his old man, he's crying.
And
it's when the Cruzman he does his clap. He's like,
oh yeah.
Yeah, the big lineman just starts the slow clap, and then they pan to John Favreau, and he's like, they're talking about Rudy. And then, it just kind of waves through the crowd. It's just awesome. And I worked there when I was 13 years old. So I would go around and try and find like spots from the movie and go to those locations. Is really cool. Best job I ever had. So
I don't know why they do it. You're already crying, and then he tackles somebody, and then you start crying even more, and then you're already in tears. You're like weeping those like baby cry tears, and then they carry him off the field, and you're like, and then it's just horrible.
And I'm with John Favreau the whole time, like, who's the wild man now? And tears coming down my face. I'm a mess.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, JD, what do you got? Number 5, man.
So I'm going with an equally as inspirational pick as Rudy. It's a fantastic film directed by Henry Winkler himself. Stars the amazingly beautiful Burt Reynolds. I'm talking Cop and a Half.
Yes.
I saw this movie probably when it came out in '93, and like wanted nothing but bad things to happen to everybody around me afterwards, because I wanted to be the cop and a half. And the part where they're in the bathroom and Burt Reynolds is pissing, and then the little kid walks in and he's like, let's play swords. And you're just like, as like a 7-year-old kid, I'm like, what the fuck is swords? And so anytime you want to scare someone in the bathroom, just quote your favorite Cop and a Half scene and play swords with a random stranger. Or in this case, an adult and a child.
And I have not seen that movie. I saw it in theaters back whenever it came out. One of my friends did. And I barely remember anything about that movie. I wish I could comment on it a little bit more. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that I haven't seen it since it came out in theaters, but it sounds like I need to check it out again.
Yeah, I've never seen it. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I know. I wish I had now, though. It sounds amazing.
It was the #1 movie on its release, and it made $40 million off of a $4 million budget. And it's got freaking Burt Reynolds in it.
Yeah, you can't go wrong there.
Wow. Well, I don't think it would have cracked my top 40, but nice pick there, JD.
Yeah. I'm just,
So much commentary.
I'm just not going to say anything.
Well, you're going to have to say something because you're next, Tommy. What do you got? Number 5.
So I'm going to change it up. And I don't know if any of you guys have seen this film because I actually have just seen it over the past year. So my number 5 is going to be Remains of the Day. So it is Anthony Hopkins, Emma Thompson, and it's a Merchant Ivory production. Remember when they would always say that, the Merchant Ivory production, which is those British films, and it is just really great. I'd always wanted to see it, and I got the chance to see it just through HBO, and it is really good. It was actually nominated for Best Picture that year. Anthony Hopkins nominated for Best Actor, and basically he is a repressed butler who goes through this one family through the 30s, 40s, and into the 50s, and it's basically just about him being a butler and never being able to show emotion and being a workaholic and never being able to live a true life, which is kind of all about that British, repressed emotions. So it's all in that vein, but it's really good. And if you guys haven't seen it, I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, I've not seen that one.
Yeah, you stumped me.
It's off my radar, but it sounds like Django Unchained without all the swearing.
It's very similar. You could call it a prequel to Django Unchained. But like I said, I just seen it. I'd always wanted to see it. I'd always remember watching the trailers, and of course they had the beautiful music, and you had the guy's voice that would kind of the otherworldly voice, and it always just looked really good. And like I said, it's really really well made, great production values. Like I said, check it out if you can.
Okay. Well, not a lot to add there because that's a sleeper pick right there, folks. So we'll see if maybe some of our audience have watched it and can tweet at us and let us know what they think about Remains of the Day. So let's go ahead and throw it over to Gabe. What do you have number 5?
Guys, you ever wake up in the morning and you've got one of those hard decisions to make, like, when you were in college and you were trying to decide on your major?
Uh-huh.
I woke up this morning and I was like, I had it down to 2 films, Robin Hood Men in Tights and Surf Ninjas. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to pick between these two. I don't know. I ended up flipping a coin. I don't think I should, but I ended up flipping a coin and I was like, how do they make Princess Bride better? You put Carrie Yules as Robin Hood, and then you cast Dave Chappelle in his all-time starring role as a Chew, son of a sneeze. So I went Robin Hood, Men in Tights, all the way. Did you guys?
I started getting lost whenever you said you were talking about you wake up in the morning and you have something hard.
Did I say that?
You did say that.
You did.
I started paying attention then.
Oh, but you really emphasized the hard.
Did I really? I'll try to do better next time.
Gabe, is that Mel Brooks?
Yeah, I mean, it's a Mel Brooks film. Who doesn't love Mel Brooks?
Love him.
You're not wrong. I mean, it's a great movie with the whole Abe Lincoln. Did you say Abe Lincoln?
Lend me your ears, and then they throw their ears at him. There's so many sections. He goes, guys, pardon me, I need some air, and he pumps his pump shoes. Like, who doesn't love that joke?
It's a winner. That's a great effing pick.
Gabe, it really shows you what happened to Carrie Yules' career. He was in Princess Bride, and then 7 years later, then he was in Robin Hood Men in Tights. It's like, what happened, Carrie?
If you look up what he's known for, that's the second movie that popped up, and I was so happy about that.
That's probably true.
Yeah. I love it. All right, Wes, what do you have number 5?
All right. I'm going to go with The Sandlot.
Wow.
Ooh.
And that was
all the way at 5, huh?
All the way at 5, yes. It was directed by David Mickey Evans, who outside of this, and I don't know if y'all have seen A Far Off Place. It had a very young Reese Witherspoon in. I actually really like that movie too. But he kind of has a very cringy filmography, but at least he got this masterpiece completed. But the reason I bring up the director is that he's the narrator for the movie. And I think we can all agree he has the perfect voice for this setting and, you know, all the situations that Smalls gets himself into. And as a kid, you just want to be a part of everything that happens in this movie. It's kind of what you dream a summer vacation would. And it really reminded me of growing up. And I grew up in kind of a large, lower middle class neighborhood in Franklin, Kentucky. And we basically had our own sandlot in the middle of the neighborhood where we played sports and got into trouble and all that. So the movie, it really encompasses that part of my childhood. And on Real Talk, we always like to do, like, what's your favorite scene of the movie? And if you guys have your favorite scene you want to throw out, I'd love to hear it. But my favorite scene of the movie is definitely the pool scene where Squints unfolds this elaborate plan to get to make out with Wendy Peppercorn, who played by the lovely Marley Shelton. And then I also had to mention my favorite quote where Ham Porter does the "You're killing me, Smalls." So that's my pick.
My favorite scene from that movie, or favorite quote, would definitely be the "You're killing me, Smalls." Obviously, the T-shirts and everything, but also very underrated. L7 Weenie.
Oh,
That's
yes.
a great one.
For some reason, the only scene I always remember from that movie is when they are riding the tilt-a-whirl and they all do tobacco and they all end up throwing up in each other's
it's
face.
awful.
It's cringeworthy, but I love it too. I laugh every time.
Chaw, the best.
I really like the 4th of July montage. That's really well done in it.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's what sticks out to me. It's definitely like that sense of Americana that the film captures that really exceeds the message of baseball and the importance of team sports at the time and camaraderie and all of that. But it takes you back to a whole different type of America, much in the same way that some other film that I can't think of does. So my comparison is bullshit.
Yes.
It's like what Cop and a Half takes you back to, right?
Oh boy,
That's pure Americana.
That is, hey man, I grew up in some sketchy neighborhoods, so I can definitely relate.
I love it. Okay, well, I'm going to throw it back over to myself here with the number 4 pick. So I'm going with another sports movie here. I feel like I could have made a list of just 5 sports movies, but there's so many good ones on here. But this one in particular is a movie I watch every single year, especially if it's an Olympic season. I'm even more excited to watch it. And I am talking about Cool Runnings, starring the late, great John Candy. Feel the rhythm, feel the rhyme, get on up. It's bobsled time. Come on. I just love this movie, and it's really grown on me over the years. I know we talked about bawling our eyes out through Rudy. I feel like this movie starts to get me now too as I get a little bit older. Some of the emotional scenes between Doris and John Candy, especially at the end where they pick up the sled and put it on their shoulder and they're like, I got to finish the race, man. And I'm just like, yeah, you do. And then his dad pulls up his shirt wearing the Jamaican shirt. It's like, come on. Such a great movie.
Now, was that based on a true story? I'm trying to remember.
Yep.
Yeah, it was.
It is. Yep. They still do the Jamaican bobsled team in the Olympics. It's still kind of a thing. You watch the Winter Olympics, they always reference that.
I was in Jamaica one time, and there was a restaurant at the airport that was called Cool Runnings. So that's cool.
Yeah, I love the pick, though. I was going to mention that, it's really in that time period of great, like, Disney sports films and live action films, because they had a great run there for a while. The Rocketeer, Miracle in the early 2000s. And I think Cool Runnings kind of goes into those films. They don't make those anymore. Now Disney does like $200 million blockbusters. But for a while there, they were making a lot of really good, like, low budget family sports comedies, dramas.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
And
go ahead.
And let's be real. Who wouldn't want to participate in a push car derby? I'd do it right now.
He would leave your podcast.
I would leave
to
this
go
right
do
now.
that.
If there's a push car derby going on, I'm gone.
That's amazing. All right, JD, you're next, man. Number 4, what do you got?
So I've got a movie that I definitely was in my wheelhouse when I was a kid. When it came out, I was a big fan of the star. I was a big fan of the writer and the director. and a big fan of the film. I'm of course talking about Groundhog Day. Was a huge Bill Murray fan.
Nice.
You know, as a kid, I knew who Harold Ramis was, and then to like know that he wrote and directed this film, it's like really discovered what he poured into it as you grow older. And you know, R.I.P. Harold Ramis, indeed. That stands for rest in peace for Kyle because he's an uneducated swine.
What's that?
I really hope you weren't paying attention because you played it off very well. But no, I think that this is the kind of movie that really like introduced me to how philosophical a movie can be while also not taking itself too seriously. And you've got the whole like existentialism about what he's going through and how that impacts his life and his relationships. And, you know, you can't help but wonder how you would act if you were in that situation. And the fact that he kills himself at certain points, he just can't take it anymore. It's just kind of astonishing. And I think it's really fun, but also really scary at the same time.
Definitely. Most underrated character in that movie, definitely Ned.
Needle?
Ned is awesome.
Yes.
Oh man, needle-nosed dads. We all have a needle-nosed dad that comes up to us every day and wants to talk about his belly button whistling competition.
It's oddly. I hope that you actually have a belly button whistling buddy.
I wish I did.
I'm surprised that you don't, honestly.
I'm super jealous.
Bringing up Groundhog's Day, I like how a lot of movies are trying to do Groundhog Day as an action movie, you know, with Live, Die, Repeat. Groundhog Day as a horror movie with, I can't think of the title.
Happy Death Day.
Happy Death Day.
Yep.
Yeah, so I like how people are kind of trying to rip it off, and none of them, in my opinion, have been as good as Groundhog Day, so I love the pick.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was going to say just real quick that Groundhog Day is kind of like the perfect quarantine movie. It's kind of like we've been living through Groundhog Day over and over again. I know a lot of people, I've read that, you know, just articles saying Groundhog Day is the movie we need now, stuff like that. So I think that's a great pick.
All right. Well, Tommy, you're next, man. What do you got?
Yeah, so number 4, I'm going with Philadelphia. So Philadelphia stars Tom Hanks and Denzel Washington. It won Tom his first Oscar for Best Actor, directed by the great late Jonathan Demme, who of course did Silence of the Lambs, coming right off Silence of the Lambs. And of course it's about Tom Hanks coming down with AIDS as a gay man and then fighting against the corporation that fired him. And I've always loved that film. It's really dramatic. It's really, it can be hard to watch also, but it really shed a light on the AIDS pandemic. You know, before that movie, of course, it'd been around for all throughout the 80s. But I think that movie did, you know, put a spotlight on it for a lot of people, maybe out in the broader community that wasn't involved with it. So in that way, you can look back and say, it really had a social action element to it. And then at the same time, it's also just a really great film. You know, 2 great stars in their prime, Tom Hanks, Denzel, really kind of going at it and then joining together at the end to kind of fight that injustice. And I've watched it again, and I think it really still holds up.
Great. Yeah. And Tom Hanks knocked it out of the park in this and then followed it up with Forrest Gump. Like, could the guy get any better in the 90s? I don't know.
Amazing. And we talked about in our podcast, you know, just what great of a run he had in the 90s. Probably the greatest decade for a lead actor ever.
Yeah. And then he's like, I'm going to kind of take one off here and do this cartoon movie. And I mean, that wasn't a hit though. I mean, Toy Story was awful.
It didn't create a franchise or anything.
I love it. All right. Well, let's keep chugging along here. Gabe, number 4, what do you have?
I'm excited about this, and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the Michael Jordan of Wales as on my number 4, starring Kiko the Whale. Free Willy came out in 1993. You know, it's about a troubled whale everybody knows this story. It's a tale as old as time. Troubled whale meets a troubled youth, and they, you know, get together, they form a bond, and they heal each other, you know.
Classic tale.
Yeah. It's great. You know, I watched it again with my 5-year-old son. I loved it. You know, a lot of big movies came out, like, you know, recently, like, what is that, Blackfish? Is that the movie you made me watch, Wes?
Yeah.
You know, it brought whale activism. Now, I will say, I watched the other 2 Free Willies. Yes, there's 2 more. You don't need to watch those.
JD, I
But,
think you hate this
Free
movie,
Willy One,
right?
fantastic.
He hates her the
Yes,
best.
Yeah,
I
that's what I
passionately.
thought I remember that from the episode.
No,
Man, I'm
I
excited.
am not a fan. I never saw the movie as a kid. I never wanted to see the movie as a kid. It was the movie that you insulted people with on the playground. You'd be like, "Yeah, your mom was so fat she was in Free Willy." Those kind of jokes. And we watched it. We did an episode in our archives on it, and I hated every single moment of it. I was just like rooting for the parents and just yelling at the stupid kid and just.
T-Man's agreeing.
The kid is really bad in it. Yeah. I don't know if Gabe is. I'm not sure what he's doing with this pick. He's going to look back on this in a couple years from now and really regret it, I think, as we all regret it right now. But
I'm going to say I don't see that happening, but, you can say that.
I love it. All right, Wes, what do you have? Number 4.
I'm gonna go with True Romance, and I don't understand why this movie is not talked about more. I think it's highly underrated, and it was a screenplay by Quentin Tarantino, who for the longest time was going to direct it as well, but it wound up going to Tony Scott. And just listen to this cast real quick. And this is not even all the recognizable members in this movie. Christian Slater, Patricia Arquette, Dennis Hopper, Val Kilmer, Gary Oldman, Brad Pitt, James Gandolfini, and Christopher Walken. And JD, could we please, I'm a huge fan of this impression. Could we please get a Christopher Walken impression real quick?
Oh, it's me, Christopher Walken. I'm here in a movie for you.
Love.
Every time
really
he gets
good.
there. Oh my God.
But if you haven't seen True Romance, you've got to see it. The Sicilian scene between Christopher Walken and Dennis Hopper is, in my opinion, one of the best written scenes in film history with the way that things play out. It's certainly not for the faint of heart, and just real quick on that, I wanted to let the listeners know what Tarantino said about that scene. His roommate was an African-American male, and he said that he gave him this whole speech about Sicilians. And then Tarantino turned around and was talking to one of his Sicilian friends about it. And this historical story that's told. And while he's telling him, his Sicilian friend, the story, he imagined it as a movie scene and then went and wrote it down. And that's where that scene came from, which the movie is very famous for. But that's all I have on True Romance, but I love it.
Tarantino only steals from the best. I love it.
And I was gonna say that's Tony Scott, and it's kind of right there in his wheelhouse, and it's a great film, great pick.
Okay, awesome. Well, let's keep on chugging along. So we're down to the number 3 pick here, and I am going to go with a comedy drama movie from a director named Chris Columbus, who brought us Home Alone and several other great movies. And JD, I'm going to need your impression again for this one here in a moment. But yeah, it stars the late great Robin Williams, Sally Field, Harvey Fierstein, Robert Prowse, Mrs. Doubtfire.
Oh yeah,
Take it away, JD.
You want me to do Walken as Mrs. Doubtfire?
No, I want you to do the you know the scene. Come on, with the pie and pops his head up.
I maybe hello.
There we go. I love it. We did that. We had a Halloween party, and he did that at nauseam all night long. I was just like, it never got old. So yeah, I mean, I really like this movie. I think this was kind of like Robin Williams' first monster hit, where he kind of came out, and this was the second highest grossing movie of the year, internet or worldwide, and then was 4 or 5 on the list domestically. Yeah, number 5, over $100 million. So watching this growing up, it was a blockbuster movie, and then we bought it, and then I just wore the VHS out over the years. So love this movie.
Love the pick.
Yeah, it's again, shameless plug. It's something that we covered in our archive, and so you could listen to all of our insights. And we had our good friend Tom Feline join us on that episode, who sort of illuminated, at least me, to the theory and the fact of just how unhinged Robin Williams is, to the fact that he's a borderline alcoholic who's going through a lot of mental issues and problems, which manifests in the way that he acts throughout. And if you notice, like even in the last scene, he's just chugging those scotches, and then he's just dressing up as a woman, and he's just a mess.
I mean, the whole plot into itself kind of makes you think, yeah, he really is a sociopath.
Yeah, he's got issues. So I had never thought about it from that point of view, and it sort of shatters the glass when you do.
Yeah,
I'm concerned for those kids.
All right, Tommy, you're next, man. What do you have?
So I'm going with the 1993 comedy Dazed and Confused.
Yes.
So Richard Linklater, and so many people in the cast, it's hard to even list them all down. So many young stars that were about to be big, some that you thought would be bigger. And it's really kind of just the ultimate hangout movie. The plot really isn't even important. It's really just the last day of high school, and then just follows them throughout the high school day, the night, into the next morning. And I just love rewatching and rewatching that film. It's like one of those films you can turn on TV, you find a scene, you can just watch the end of it. Like I said, it doesn't even matter the plot, because it's really just about being with the characters, being with that soundtrack, which is really one of the best soundtracks of the 90s. So many great classic rock score music pieces. And like I said, you can just rewatch it over and over again, even just for Matthew McConaughey's iconic performance. So if you haven't seen it lately, I would check it out.
Well, you know what I love about these high school girls, man? I get older and they stay the same age, man.
So many great lines. And what is Ben Affleck doing in that movie? I rewatch his performance over and over again. What is he going for? But it's maybe still one of his best performances.
He just walks around with a frat paddle half the movie. Yeah, that's a tremendous pick. I'm happy somebody put it on their list.
I'm going to make 2 comments really quick. The first is Richard Linklater is awesome. The second, Kyle, you skipped me.
I sure did. You're right.
Yeah,
I thought it came to me really fast. I was not ready. I was like, what?
I was like, doesn't Tommy come after me?
Right.
I was like, I didn't say my pick yet.
Man, it is
All
5
right.
people. That's rough.
You know what, JD? Go ahead and go next. I mean, I feel bad now.
Okay, I'll go ahead and I'll go in retrograde to what should have been my pick, and I feel like you'll be able to probably guess what I'm going to pick right now.
Ooh, let me think of something really pretentious.
You got
Hold
5,
on.
4,
A Few Good Men.
2, 1. You're wrong, bitch. It's Demolition Man.
All right.
Oh man.
How can it not be Demolition Man? I was literally watching this movie on Saturday before we went out for the night. We went out to a bar, so I had to get pumped up. So I'm like, I'm going to watch Demolition Man. It's got the great mix of character work that Wesley Snipes and Sylvester Stallone bring that few people can match, which they kind of match in Expendables with a little bit of their energy and their charisma. But to have them in this head-to-head futuristic battle, and then to compare it to what 1993 thought that the world would be in 2010 and 2032, and to realize all the stuff that they kind of got right, some of the stuff that we are yet to see get right. But it's got the chick from the buses in it, and it's got the dude from Beetlejuice in it. I'm obviously just being a jackass because I know who they are, but and it's got the Zachary Lamb played was a bit part in an episode of Full House. So there's that.
Okay, well, I have
certainly
2 things.
noteworthy.
I have 2 quick things. One, awful pick. This movie does not hold up. We talked about this on our we talked about it on the podcast. I hated the rewatch. I think it's terrible. And then second of all, I still love you though. So let's throw it over to Gabe, since we're back on track here, and get his third pick.
Want to hear Kyle stop talking about sports movies?
I have one more. Go ahead, though.
I don't doubt it. Sorry.
Well, my number 3 is the same as one that's been named before. Cool Runnings. Feel the rhythm, feel the ride. Come on out, it's push car time. There's the same type of people that lie about crying at the end of this movie are the same ones that pee in the shower and won't admit it. Those are the types of people that didn't cry at the end of this movie.
That's a great analogy.
And it's very oddly specific.
Yeah, it is really specific.
Who are you referencing? Is it yourself?
Just people.
Yeah, it is.
Gabe's like, it's just somebody out there.
What happens if you watch the movie while you're in the shower and peeing? Do you cry? Do you pee? Is there a mixture of the both? I mean, what happens?
It's the same thing as if you sneeze, burp, and cough at the same time, your head just explodes, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Or you fart.
No, that's fart. I think it is fart.
Oh,
Well, no,
gosh.
I'm just saying if you do all three of those things, then you will fart as well. And that's a powerful fart. That's worse than a shower fart. Have you ever farted in the shower? Why does it always smell so much worse than if you fart anywhere else? But for some reason, shower farts are just ridiculous.
Or the bath. The bath is bad too. And this has taken a weird turn from where I thought I'd be talking about the movie to bath farts, but I'm okay with that. Let's stick on this for 20 minutes.
No, let's just
very
end
weird.
let's just keep going with this. Forget the movies.
So name some other waters that you could toot in and it would smell different. My favorite scene of this movie is when they watch the bobsleds go down for the first time. All the Jamaicans watch that really outdated video, and then everybody suddenly leaves the room, and there's only the 4 left from the running. And I don't know why I laugh at that every time. And then he says, "Let me draw a line down the middle of your head and make it look like a butt."
Yeah.
And I like that section.
Gosh, that's amazing. All right, well,
That's
I'm gonna keep this ball a rolling here and throw it over to Wes with his number 3 pick.
Well, I don't know how I'm going to follow that up, but
You don't.
I'm going to go with something a little more simple, and I'm going to go with The Fugitive.
All right,
And
that's some action in here.
such a major blockbuster, such a huge. It was probably was it number 3 maybe behind?
Yeah, I think it was number 3.
Number
West.
2?
It was really high.
Number 2 in the domestic box office.
Okay, number 2. I knew it was a huge hit. It was directed by Andrew Davis. It's got Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones. And if you want to hear more thoughts, our thoughts on the Fugitive, when we've got a little bit more time, we covered in depth on episode 4 of our podcast. And it's not too often that these types of action thrillers get nominated for Academy Awards. But this movie, I didn't know this. It got nominated for 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture.
Wow.
And it's so well acted. It's so exciting. It's so much fun. And it's just a thrill ride. It's one of those that you just want to grab your popcorn, kick back, and just enjoy it. And my favorite scene of this one is the bus escape, as it's on the train tracks. It's just such a great scene. So that's my number 3.
It's a great pick. I recently rewatched that movie. I hadn't seen it in a few years, and it holds up like a motherfucker. And so, conversely, Kyle's favorite grab a thing of popcorn movie is 8mm.
Nope.
I was like, I don't know if that's a popcorn movie.
It is.
I
It
would
is
say
for the
what,
same people Gabe was describing earlier.
that's the game. Yeah, those people. That's true. And Wes, I was gonna say,
full circle.
that's a great pick. And like I said, we did cover that pretty in depth in our podcast the other day. And it's really just one of those films that just never lets up. It's so well done. Great thriller.
Okay, love it. Well, we are down to the final 2 picks here. I am going to go with my number 2 pick, and it was the highest grossing movie of all time in 1993 when it came out, and just another masterpiece from Steven Spielberg. Of course, I am talking about Jurassic Park, that you guys covered on your podcast and was the first episode that we ever covered on our podcast. And I love this movie. I know JD loves the movie. I mean, he's got Jeff Goldblum stuff all over his house. I'm rocking the t-shirt. Gabe's got the Jurassic Park t-shirt on. Like, I know we're all fans of the movie. So I felt like this could have been number 1, but I decided to go with what's my most rewatchable movie. It just almost made the cut. But I love this movie, and it's aged so well.
Gabe, are you okay?
Yeah, I was so excited I dropped my phone.
Gabe is a JP super fan.
That or a T-Rex just pounded on the pavement outside my house, and it knocked it over. One of the two.
So good.
Yeah,
Right.
I was gonna say real quick, great pick. I mean, I know we're all just huge JP fans.
I love it. All right, well, I'm going to throw it over to JD with his number 2 pick. What do you got?
So there's a reason why I kept a little quiet, and that's because my number 2 pick is also Jurassic Park.
Mm-hmm. I figured it would. Let's go through our favorite scene of the movie. If you've got one, throw it out. What do you like about it?
Well, my favorite is seeing the lawyer getting eaten off the shitter.
Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, T-Rex scene. That's my favorite. Every time I can rewatch it. So good.
Okay. I would probably go with Nedry in pulling out the shaving cream. I just love his little reaction when it pops open. He's like, "Whee!" Just,
Yes. We were talking a little bit about that, and then how he takes the shaving cream and he turns around and he puts it on like a cherry pie or something
Right.
that's behind the table.
Yeah.
So funny.
So for what it's worth, so obviously Kyle mentioned that I am a huge Jeff Goldblum fan, and I've got my Jeff Goldblum story that I will just insert a little bit of into here for you guys, for you that are joining us, new listeners who haven't heard the story. At the time I met Jeff Goldblum, and it's he's, let's just say, he's as creepy in real life as he is in his movies. And,
Did he have a shirt on?
He had a shirt on, but so if you didn't know, he's with the Mildred Snitzer Orchestra, and he puts on jazz shows. And before they got big, they used to do free jazz shows in Los Angeles. And so we were in San Diego at the time and decided to drive up to LA for this show because it was free. So we're like, why not? And we got a table right in front by the stage. And so I was not heckling him, but I was kind of like engaging with him because he did like a lot of audience engagement type of things. So like I would always be like the first one with my hand up and be like, hey, look at me, look at me. Anyway, so we go up to meet him afterwards, and we go to take a picture with him, and he goes, what's your name? And I said, my name's Jeff Goldblum. And he goes, ah, really? And then he just started rubbing my back. And the whole time that we were taking the picture, he's just scratching my back. It was awesome.
You're the
Seems
luckiest
like
man I've
something he
ever
would
known.
do.
That's amazing. I just feel like he is just that character now, which is awesome. That's a good story.
all right. Well, Tommy, you're next, man. What do you got at number 2?
So number 2, I'm going to go with Carlito's Way. So this is with Al Pacino, Sean Penn, 1993 gangster film. So it was kind of like, it was kind of advertised as the sequel to Scarface. It really wasn't, but it had the same actor. Brian De Palma directed it, and it was in that same world. But if you guys haven't seen it, it's so well done, and it's Al Pacino almost understated. You know, we talk a lot about Al Pacino just yelling every film, which he kind of does, but he's kind of understated in this film for most of the time. He does raise the temperature a little bit. And just a crazy Sean Penn performance with his crazy hair. And then really just the last like 30 minutes is like Brian De Palma just at the top of his game. Great music, great camera work, really highly recommended.
That's a great pick. Yeah.
I love that.
Who doesn't love angry Sean Penn?
Madonna.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I like to go through Al Pacino movies and
Sorry.
just count the amount of times he goes, whoa. Just, it's in every movie.
Every film. Every film. Now that's basically just what he says.
Yeah. He's just a caricature of himself now. It's phenomenal. But Gabe, what do you got at number 2, man?
Well, I feel like it's Groundhog Day because I'm going to go ahead and say Groundhog Day again. That was my number 2 pick. Who hasn't wanted to let a groundhog drive their vehicle into a quarry?
Never happened to me.
Who hasn't fantasized about that? No, one of you guys said that your favorite movie, I forget who it is Back to the Future. Which one is it, Kyle?
That's me.
Oh,
All right.
Great movie.
So if I'm in Groundhog Day, this is what grinds my gears. I would totally use it to make money. You could go sports gamble, go to the horse track, do something. You know, you get to live the day over and over again. Make a bunch of money. Also, who doesn't love hotter version of Elaine Bettis? You know,
Andy McDowell?
yeah. I mean, that's what it looks like to me.
Okay.
But no, that's my take on. I love that movie. It's a great flick. Couldn't agree with you more.
Okay. Yeah, I love Groundhog Day. All right, Wes, what do you have at number 2?
You've already said it. It's Rudy.
Rudy.
And we've already talked about my favorite scene. I think we've pretty much covered. Like I said, for me, it's the most inspirational film of all time. It kind of gets down deep in those competitive desires and stirs the emotions of, you know, that for those that love sports, who've played sports, that are competitive, it just gets me.
I tell you what, Sean Astin, he does not age. Have you seen him lately? He still looks
Doesn't age at
exactly
all.
the same
That he did in Goonies.
that he did in Goonies. It's pretty incredible.
I think
Yep.
it's because he's so short. He doesn't have a lot of body to age. I don't know how that works.
Hey, Gabe, what? Don't be a shortist.
I do have a. Oh, go ahead.
Shortest. That's not a thing.
It's a thing. I think it's a thing. We're going to make it a thing if it's not a thing already.
My wife is 4'9". I'm not a shortest.
Don't let her know that.
Right. Well, you could be deep down inside. It's coming out now in the podcast.
Oh gosh.
You're
Yeah, don't listen to this,
punishing
Rachel.
All right. Well, we're to the final pick here. I'll give the rundown of our first 4 picks and kind of lead into the final one here. So I started with Rudy, then went to Cool Runnings at number 4. Mrs. Doubtfire was number 3. We had some JP Jurassic Park at number 2. And number 1, I've got the whole gang here. I've got Timmy and Tommy Timmons, Bertram Weeks, Kenny DeNunez, Yeah, Squints, Ham, Benny the Jet, and of course, Scotty Smalls. The Sandlot, man, to me, it's the most rewatchable movie out of all the 1993 films that I love, and there's just so many of them. I could have made a top 30 list, to be honest, but I just love this movie, and I'll share my little bobblehead for you guys here. I think you'll like this.
Oh, okay. I thought that meant your penis was going to
Yep.
come out.
I didn't know where else would go.
Legends
I'm glad
never
it didn't
die.
go that way.
I didn't know what type of podcast this was becoming.
Yeah. I only have
Back
3.
in time after dark.
Right. It's getting late, so things get crazy.
Yep. But yeah, I love that quote. He was actually at a minor league ballpark, and my family's pizza company supplies the food for that minor league baseball park. So I had my sister run up there and grab me the bobblehead, and I was like, it fits right in with my Dwight K. Schrute and my DDP bobbleheads that are on my office.
DDP, yes.
Yes. What a combo.
There we go. All right, so JD, you're next, man. So you started with Cop and a Half. Your 4th pick was Groundhog Day. 3rd was Demolition Man. 2nd was Jurassic Park. Number 1, what do you have?
So my number 1 pick, and I'm a little disappointed I haven't heard it come up in anybody else's list yet. Maybe somebody's holding out for it also to be number 1, but this is probably in my top 3 favorite movies of all times. It's a movie, and I'm being serious. Like I very joke around a lot, and then set you up for Cop and a Half, and then bang. Robert De Niro's directorial debut, based on a Chaz Palminteri play of the same name. I'm talking about A Bronx Tale.
Mm-hmm.
To me, like everything that we talk about, the epitome of early America and mid-classic period of 1960s, and what that meant as an Italian American myself to grow up in the city and see these kids running around, and to grow from youths to teens and to emulate the gangsters that they saw around them, and then for De Niro to be such a strong figure for his kid. Like I remember the first time I saw this movie, it was 1996, and it was at a 4th of July party. And I spent the entire party just like locked to the TV, just engrossed with this film. And it's like, it's never left me, and it never will leave me. And it'll always be one of my favorites.
I don't want to call this pick pretentious, but
It's Robert De Niro. How is that? How is Pacino at 2 not pretentious, but De Niro at 1 is pretentious?
Based off of a play of the same name. Yeah, just come on, man.
Chaz. No, it's a great pick. Yeah, go ahead, Wes.
Well, I was going to say, when I think about that movie, I always think about the scene where he picks the girl up, and the gangsters told him, when you open the door for her, by the time you don't get around to your door, she unlocks your door, she's not a keeper.
That's legit. That's legit.
It is, and I didn't keep that in mind when I got married. Oh, I hope my wife doesn't listen to this, but she did not unlock the door for me.
That's upsetting. What kind of rules are they teaching them down there in Brazil?
I don't know. Not that one.
Well,
All right, Tommy, you're up next, man. So you started with Remains of the Day. Then we went to Philadelphia with Tom Hanks. Dazed and Confused at number 3. Carlito's Way at number 2. I'm interested, man. What do you got?
So now that you read my list really is pretentious. Sorry about that, guys. I'm going to go with something still in the pretentious vein because I got to keep it going. I got to go with Schindler's List at number 1. It really is one of my all-time favorite films. Now, it's not an easy film to watch. You know, it is really difficult to watch. There's so many elements to it, but it's a really important film. I think it's one of those films that, you know, they showed a lot of high schools because it is education. It's living history in a lot of ways. But it still has that Spielbergian touch where it's still so watchable. So even though it's about the Holocaust and it's got the Warsaw Ghetto Purge, which is probably one of his most famous scenes, it still is a really rewatchable film. And it really does teach you about that time period, which is something that, as Spielberg always talks about, he made that film so it doesn't happen again. So if you haven't watched it or haven't watched it lately, I would highly recommend you check it out.
Yep. I mean, and had you guys not removed Jurassic Park, you would have had Spielberg at 2 and 1. How impressive is that?
Yep. Yeah, this was just his year. I always think of this as kind of his year.
Can you imagine going from directing Jurassic Park to Schindler's List? Like, well, he was probably like every other day. I couldn't switch moods like that.
He was actually in
dinosaurs.
post-production while he was on set at Schindler's List. He was in the post-production of Jurassic Park, which is crazy.
He was actually doing teleconferences even then in 90. They set it up so he could do that, so he could see what they were working on.
Wow.
Back in
That's
Hollywood
insane.
while he was in Poland shooting Schindler's List.
All right. Well, Gabe, over to you, man. So we started with Robin Hood, Men in Tights. Number 4, and this really pissed JD off, Free Willy. Number 3,
damn it.
Cool Runnings. Number 2 was Groundhog Day. Man, what do you have at number 1?
I'm excited to listen to my list. I'm the opposite of T-Man. I'm not pretentious. I sound like a 7-year-old kid. And my number 1 is going to stick on that vein because why not? And this really is one of my favorite movies of all time, just like we just talked about. A Nightmare Before Christmas. It's written by Tim Burton. Is it a Christmas movie? Is it a Halloween movie? Who knows? I mean, what do you guys think?
Christmas
movie.
in the title.
But you can go either way.
Halloween.
I think I watch it mid-November, so it gets both.
There you go.
So it's a Thanksgiving
So Thanksgiving,
movie.
yeah.
Thanksgiving movie, yeah. I always watch it right after the Thanksgiving parade.
Okay. I mean, I watch
killing winners.
I watch it every year, but I did take my 5-year-old recently to see it. It's kind of frightening. So, you know, watch out if you're taking your kids to see it. I didn't remember how frightening it was.
And Gabe, you can't forget about Danny Elfman's score and his songs. I think it's like the best Danny Elfman that there's ever been.
I was going to say that. Tim Burton is my favorite director. Talk about it all the time because he takes you to a different world. He didn't direct this. Henry Selick did. But he did write it. And I like his worlds that he makes. And then you got the combo of Danny Elfman, what's this? What's this? I mean, you can't beat it.
He sings those songs too.
Who does? Me?
No, no. Danny Elfman. Danny Elfman is the voice of the Pumpkin King in the movie. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Knowledge dropped.
Wow.
Awesome. All right, Wes, last man up, dude. You started with The Sandlot, then you went to True Romance at 4, The Fugitive at number 3, Rudy at 2. What do you have as your number 1 pick from 1993?
Well, I feel like I had a pretty fun list, and then I think I'm going to end on a pretentious note because I also went with Schindler's List.
Wow.
As well. And I can't really say this is my most favorite film to watch, but, you know, it's what are the best films of 1993, and that's why I went with the pick. In today's culture, I kind of feel like the Holocaust has become so trivialized and made fun of and egregiously compared to events of today. But when 6 million souls perish, you know, there's no comparison to that of anything going on in our country. But I praise Steven Spielberg for tackling the project. You know, his heritage, he has Jewish ancestry. And so it was a very important film to him. He shot it in a documentary style, which I think that approach really helped make the film stick with you because it made it feel so real. And my favorite scene of that movie is one that T-Man's already mentioned, and it's the ghetto scene. So anyway, if I wouldn't have put it there, then I wouldn't have been genuine, with your audience. I really felt like that I wanted to put it there because I really do, outside of Jurassic Park, felt it was the best film. So sorry to end on kind of a serious note after we've had so much fun, but that's where I went. Sorry.
Like Jerry Seinfeld making out with the girl while watching it.
Yeah, it even created one of the best Seinfeld episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we covered a lot of that just on Tommy's pick, but yeah, I mean, you can't argue. It's one of the best movies of 1993, hands down. So, is it rewatchable? I don't know. I feel like I watch it one time and I'm like, I think I'm all set.
Yeah.
Or like Passion of the Christ. I'm like, I don't know if I want to watch that again.
No, I agree with you. That's why I was like, I don't know if it's hard to call it your favorite. It's almost that you respect it so much, it is one of the best films, and that's kind of why I went. It's not that I go to my physical media collections like, all right, Schindler's List, let's go, get the popcorn, get the kids, get the wife, let's sit down and enjoy it. But it is a great film.
It's one of those films, like I had a friend who had never seen it, and he was like, should I watch Schindler's List? I was like, how have you not watched Schindler's List? It's almost one of those films that you have to watch. And that's why they do show it in high schools, because it's a piece of history that I think you mentioned it, Wes, that doesn't need to be forgotten. And it's a piece of history that people need to understand really what happened. And I think that movie really shows that in all of its effect.
Did you guys watch that in high school? Because we did a whole series on Anne Frank, The Diary of Anne Frank, and bam, Schindler's List.
I did.
Yeah.
So, did you, Kyle?
Yeah, they did. They made us sit through it. Yeah.
So my high school did not. Instead, we had our history teacher was married to a Jewish woman, and he thought it would be appropriate to show his son and daughter's bar and bat mitzvahs. So we watched home footage of this man's family, and at the end he just said, well, the Holocaust could have made them not be here. And I was like, okay, man, that was weird.
Very.
Wow.
How much of the bar mitzvah did it show?
It was the whole tape. It was like a wedding tape. It had the dancing
and those tapes are always the worst. Like wedding, anything. Like if you're not there, just they're not worth the watch.
It was odd, to say the least. I would have rather have watched Schindler's List.
Was there like a crazy uncle where they pan, they're like, Uncle Tom, say something. He's like, get this fucking camera out of my face.
Yeah.
Like,
just
can't say that in school. Okay.
It was the teacher. It sounds like it was the teacher was the crazy guy.
He was definitely a lunatic.
Well,
I'm gonna have to send out some texts to some people from high school later tonight. Do you remember Mr. Max Ellis's bat mitzvah tapes in high school?
Well, I'm sure we all had a couple that were just a bit outside, and a couple that we wanted on the list but couldn't fit on the list here. So let's go through a couple honorable mentions here, and I'll start us off. Dazed and Confused was one of the movies that I almost had on the list. I love that movie. Wayne's World 2, which we're actually covering this month on the podcast. I love Wayne Stock. I love all things Wayne's World. And man, Son-in-Law, I love that freaking movie, but it's not good enough to be on the top 5 because it's just, it's Pauly Shore, and a little bit of Hamilton Porter in there too, as the little brother, or the sister's brother. So, those were mine that were kind of a bit outside. And Rookie of the Year as well. But I had too many sports movies as it was, so couldn't put that one on there.
Yeah, Kyle, we need to start a competition where the audience gets to try to predict your lists ahead of time, because I think I had yours down to a T.
Wow.
Rex, that is. But I'm surprised Rookie of the Year was not on it. But I knew Son-in-Law was on your radar.
Son-in-Law.
Sure, man.
Man, the best Pauly Shore movie is a Goofy movie. I can't go down that road.
No, Gabe, In the Army Now.
In the Army
Now
now?
is solid.
What about
Jury
what a
Duty,
goofy
though.
movie? I think
Jury
that's my
Duty is
favorite.
underrated too. A lot of good Pauly Shore
Sean
stuff.
Whalen.
Okay.
Nobody's talking about Biodome here.
We covered it. JD actually did not like the movie.
I did not either.
Did not.
Okay.
I had never seen it as a kid, so I had no nostalgia based into it. So coming in as an adult, I was kind of like, this sucks.
I mean, and that's big for a lot of those movies. You have to have that nostalgia, that connection to it, and if you don't, you're just kind of like, oh,
Yeah, it's a lot.
All right, JD, what was on your what was outside your top 5, JD?
So I will definitely say Mrs. Doubtfire was difficult to not include. That was a hard one. Mrs. Doubtfire's husband, Mr. Nanning, was hard to not include. Cheap plug. I thought I'd get more laughter for that, but the big.
It's a silent laugh.
You're gonna redo that joke. You're gonna make it better. You're gonna take all the old words out, put all new words in, and then it's gonna be a hit. And that's a Mitch Hedberg joke, which that fell flat too.
I love Mitch Hedberg.
We need some new jokes fast.
The one that I'm surprised that none of us had brought up is Falling Down.
Good movie. Yeah, underrated. It really has aged well, I think.
It has. Having watched that semi-recently, within the last year or two, like as an adult, having seen it as a child and then watching it as an adult and realizing, going through like a lot of the stress that he's gone through and like the pains of just working and, you know, getting jobs, losing jobs, getting your food fucked up, having your life fucked up, having your relationships fucked up. And you just literally, he's falling down. I don't know. That's a good movie. That was tough to not include.
Yeah, I think it's a great pick. And it's kind of like, well, now everybody in America is that character in a lot of ways. And which is a little scary, but it really has aged well.
Definitely. Okay. Well, Tommy, what about you, man?
Yeah, I had a couple of picks. There actually was a lot of movies from 1993. It was really hard to get this list. One that I really wanted to include that I didn't was Tombstone. Great Western, holds up really well. Kurt Russell, great cast. Of course, Wyatt Earp. I think Val Kilmer's best performance is Doc Holliday.
It's awesome.
And of course, so well done. And it really is. I think a lot of people like that movie now. And I've rewatched it, and you can kind of tell that it had some directorial troubles because apparently the rumors are that Kurt Russell had to take over directing like halfway through. You can kind of see that it does have like the plot starts like by the middle third. It's like, where are we going with this? But it's still a great movie. And then I was trying to also think of a couple others. Hocus Pocus, great Disney live action once again. I know a lot of people love that film now. And What's Eating Gilbert Grape is also really good. Leonardo DiCaprio, Best Supporting Actor nomination for that one.
Mm-hmm. That's a solid one. Yeah, I totally forgot about Hocus Pocus. Great Disney movie. Okay. Gabe, how about you, man?
Well, and you're not going to believe this was an honorable mention, but Schindler's List just didn't fit my list. So
right.
It just didn't work with the other movies, so I didn't throw it in there, but it's an honorable mention. And I said it earlier, Surf Ninjas, great movie. Everything we loved as a kid, loved surfing, loved ninjas. Quan Su, dudes. That one just missed. And then he just named it. Hocus Pocus barely missed, and so did Mrs. Doubtfire for me. Love both of those.
Cool. And then Wes, how about you?
You guys have all said, some of the honorable mentions that I was throwing around for my top 5. So let me go a little bit different direction, give some more variety of movies that I truly love. I like The Good Son with Elijah Wood and Macaulay Culkin.
I think forgot about The Good Son.
God, such a good movie.
It is. It's a very, very creepy film. And I don't know why that movie has always stuck with me. I mean, I saw it as an 11-year-old, you know, whenever it came out, and it stuck with me since. Cliffhanger, you brought up Sly Stallone earlier. I love Cliffhanger. It is just one of those goofy, fun action movies. You got John Lithgow playing the bad guy. You got some really cool shots, you know, of them climbing. And there's that one scene where the woman's falling and Sly's got her hand and the glove slips out and she falls and it scars him and all that. It's just, that doesn't sound like that's a very fun scene, but it actually, the movie is a lot of fun.
Right.
Tell us, Wes.
Yeah, I'm not selling this very good.
Great too.
They did like 30 parodies off that.
Yeah. And it's got a great bad guy, John Lithgow, in that. Really good.
Fantastic.
Yeah, he's good.
But there's a video game for Sega based on it that was extremely difficult, but it was a lot of fun.
I'll go with 2 more. I'll give you The Firm. Always love the courtroom dramas. I don't know if this movie started the Tom Cruise has to run everywhere all the time and all of his movies since then. But I know he does a lot of running in The Firm, and I feel like he just keeps doing the running scenes from The Firm. But I really like that one. And then the last one I'll throw out to you is Menace to Society. I really like the Hughes brothers. I'm a big fan of From Hell, Book of Eli, some of those other movies. Dead Presidents is all right, but Menace to Society is really good. I might say this controversially, but I actually like Menace to Society more than I like Boys in the Hood. And I like Boys in the Hood a lot, but I think everybody thinks of, you know, those kind of urban dramas like Boys in the Hood is like the crown jewel of that. But I've always been a bigger fan of Menace to Society. So that's my picks.
Yeah, I feel like Menace to Society would have been possibly on my list if I had watched it more than like one time. It's just, I watched it once, loved it, and just never got back around to it. But it's such a good movie.
And I've seen it, I think, within the last 5 years, and I've probably seen it 2 or 3 times, but it sticks with me. And the last time I watched it, the scene, whenever they go into the grocery store and they kill, or as a convenience store and they kill the clerk and stuff, it's a very terrible but very realistic type scene, that these are the types of things that are happening. And I just thought that they really captured very realistically what kind of takes place sometimes in the inner city. And yeah, it's great. Wanted to make sure I mentioned that one. Okay.
Well, we did it, guys. This has been really fun. I love hearing everybody's picks and breaking it down with you guys. So, one more time, plug your podcast and let everybody know where they can listen to you guys and where they can follow you.
Well, thanks. We've had a great time. We really, really appreciate you having us on. Like you said, we're a new podcast. We're just starting up, and to have you guys who have a great show, that have a good listener base, that cover a lot of the stuff that we enjoy, and some of the same jokes we like to make, is really fun, and we really appreciate that support. But you can find us on Twitter. We're at REEL, REEL_cast. We have a Facebook page as well. It's a Facebook group, actually. Just type in Real Talk, a movie podcast. Gabe runs that. We have a lot of fun discussing movies and advertising our show a little bit. So we'd love for any of your listeners that want to join or become followers of ours and just kind of, keep this going, keep Movie Talk alive.
Definitely. Yep. Love having you guys on. We'll have to get you back on again sometime in the near future. And if you guys ever want us to come on, we definitely we owe you one.
Yeah, we'd love to have you guys, and we will definitely work that out.
All right, that sounds great. So as Wes said, check them out. REEL_cast, Real Talk Movie Podcast, up everywhere you listen to podcasts, or at least most places. And of course, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor FM, YouTube, and we are part of the SIP network. So check out all those amazing podcasts. So thanks for listening to another Top 5 episode. We will be back in a couple days with another Top 5 episode. JD, do you want to preview our next Top 5? Give the audience a little tease?
little tease, a little tickle, a little pickle. We're going to be diving into the top 5, drum roll, ba-rum, SNL movies.
Yes.
We are tickling into doing Wayne's World 2. We've got the first Wayne's World in our archives. I believe when we recorded that episode, I did that outside of my building at work.
Yes, you did.
Pausing as traffic came by, but nonetheless, this one will be a lot more exciting, a lot more professionally done. But top 5 SNL movies, obviously, I've got a great story to talk about, meeting the ladies' man himself. And that's a very funny story, so you're going to want to catch on to that.
I can't wait, man. So again, thanks for listening, guys. We will talk to you in a couple days.
Oh, hello. That's walking as Mrs. Doubtfire.